At the edge of the valley, where the mountains slowly bowed into plains, there was a river that never slept. It did not roar like a storm, nor lie still like a forgotten pond. It moved quietly, endlessly, its surface glimmering under the sun by day and reflecting the stars by night. Villagers called it many names, but none mattered as much as the truth they all sensed. The river was always changing, yet it never stopped being itself. One morning, a child stood before this river for the first time. The child had traveled far, carrying little more than a cloth bag and a heart filled with questions. Life had already shown its sharp edges. Things once loved had vanished. Promises had dissolved, and familiar paths had shifted without warning. The child did not yet have words like impermanence or attachment, but the feeling lived quietly inside, a fear of things that would not stay. As the child approached the riverbank, bare feet sinking slightly into damp soil, unease crept in. The water flowed without hesitation, without apology. Leaves drifted past, never circling back. Twigs spun briefly in small whirlpools before being released downstream. The river did not ask permission to move forward. The child frowned. "Why does it never stop?" the child whispered, as if the river might hear. In the stillness of the morning, the question echoed louder than expected. The river answered only by continuing its flow. The child sat down, hugging their knees. There was something unsettling about the water. If it could not be held still, how could it be trusted? What if everything became like this river, always leaving, never remaining? The child remembered moments that had already slipped away, laughter that ended too soon, people who promised to stay but did not, places that changed before the heart was ready. Each memory felt like standing in shallow water while the ground beneath slowly dissolved. The river seemed to embody all of that fear. This river is dangerous, the child thought, not because it is deep, but because it refuses to stay. The child picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. The ripples spread outward, then disappeared as if nothing had happened. The stone sank without ceremony, swallowed by the current. "See," the child muttered, "even stones don't last here." A breeze passed, carrying the scent of wet earth and wild grass. The river continued, indifferent to the child's thoughts. To the child, this indifference felt cruel. How could something be so calm while never stopping? The child stood and walked along the bank, trying to find a place where the river might slow, where it might pause, even for a moment. But everywhere, the water moved. Faster in some places, slower in others, but never still. The child's chest tightened. If I step in, the child thought, I will be carried away. Fear rose not from the water's strength, but from its unpredictability. The child had learned to fear change long before meeting the river. Change had arrived uninvited in life, taking things away without explanation. The river felt like a living reminder of that truth. The child sat again, this time closer to the edge. Fingers dipped cautiously into the water. It was cool, refreshing even, but the sensation did not linger. The water touched the skin and was gone, replaced instantly by more water, different water. The child pulled their hand back quickly. "Nothing stays," the child whispered, voice trembling, not even for a breath. The river, of course, did not deny this. As the sun climbed higher, the river sparkled brighter, as if mocking the child's worry with its beauty. Birds came to drink, unafraid. A deer stepped gently into the shallows, drank, and left without hesitation. Even insects skimmed the surface, touching without clinging. The child watched them all. Why aren't they afraid? The child wondered. Perhaps they did not expect the water to remain. Perhaps they did not ask the river for promises it could not give. But the child was not like them. Not yet. In the child's heart lived a quiet longing for stillness. A place where nothing would change. A moment that could be held forever without slipping through the fingers. The river offered none of that. Instead, it offered movement. As hours passed, the child remained there, torn between fascination and fear. The river was beautiful, undeniable, but it felt like a teacher who spoke in a language the child did not understand. The child closed their eyes and listened. The sound of the water was not chaotic. It was rhythmic, steady, almost gentle. Beneath the movement, there was a kind of order, one that did not rely on stopping. This realization unsettled the child even more. If movement can be peaceful, the child thought, then why does change hurt so much? A memory surfaced, holding on to something tightly, believing that effort alone could keep it from leaving. But it had left anyway, not because of neglect, but because leaving was its nature. Tears welled in the child's eyes. "Why does everything move on without me?" the child whispered. The river flowed on. Yet, as the child continued to sit there, something subtle began to shift. The fear did not vanish, but it softened, just enough to allow curiosity to enter. What if the river was not cruel? What if it was simply honest? The child looked again, this time more carefully. The river did not rush everything away. Some things lingered briefly along the edges. Foam caught between stones, leaves resting momentarily in eddies before drifting on. The river allowed pauses, but never permanence. Perhaps that was the truth of life as well. The child exhaled slowly, noticing for the first time how tense their body had been. Shoulders lowered slightly. The river had not changed, but something in the child had begun to loosen. Fear still lingered, but it no longer dominated every thought. The child realized something quietly, without celebration. The river was not trying to take anything away. It was simply moving forward. And perhaps the pain the child felt did not come from the river's movement, but from the wish that it would stop. As the sun began its descent, casting long golden reflections across the water, the child remained by the river, no longer throwing stones, no longer searching for stillness. Just watching. The river never stopped. And for the first time, the child did not immediately turn away from that truth. Instead, the child stayed, listening, observing, standing at the beginning of a journey that would slowly reveal a deeper understanding. That change, like the river, was not an enemy to be conquered, but a reality to be understood. The child did not notice the monk at first. He was seated beneath a weathered fig tree, a short distance from the riverbank, so still that he seemed part of the landscape itself. His robe was faded by time, its color softened by countless sunrises and rains. His posture was upright, yet effortless, like a mountain that had never learned tension. One hand rested loosely on his knee, the other held nothing at all. The child's eyes had been fixed on the river, on its refusal to pause, on the way it carried everything forward without regret. Only when the shadow of the fig tree lengthened and brushed against the child's feet did the presence of another being quietly enter awareness. The child looked up. The monk was watching the river too, not with curiosity, not with concern, but with the same calm one might watch the breathing of a sleeping infant. Embarrassed to have been observed in such vulnerable stillness, the child quickly looked away. "How long have you been there?" the child asked. The monk smiled gently, not answering immediately. "Long enough to see many waters pass," he said at last. His voice was soft, like dry leaves brushing together in the wind. The child frowned. "Then you know this river well." "I know it only as one knows a friend," the monk replied, "by being with it." The child glanced at the monk's calm face, then back at the restless water. "I don't like this river," the child said honestly. "It makes me uneasy." The monk nodded, as if the child had said something entirely reasonable. "Yes," he said, "many feel that way." "Why?" the child asked. "Because it does not promise anything." The child considered this. "Shouldn't it?" they asked. "If it stayed still, people wouldn't be afraid of it." The monk's smile deepened, not amused but compassionate. "Would you trust a heart that never beat?" he asked. The child hesitated. "No," the child admitted. "Would you trust lungs that never breathe?" Again, the child shook their head. "Then why ask the river to stop being alive?" the monk said gently. The child opened their mouth to respond, but no words came. The question landed softly, yet it echoed deeply. The monk rose slowly, joints moving with the ease of someone who had long stopped arguing with time. He walked toward the riverbank, bare feet touching the earth as if greeting it. "Come," he said, "sit with me." The child followed, cautiously, as though approaching something sacred or dangerous, or both. They sat side by side, facing the water. For a long moment, neither spoke. The river filled the silence, not intrusively, but faithfully. It did not hurry to be heard, nor did it withdraw. You see, the monk said at last, most people come to the river asking it to be something else. The child tilted their head. Like what? Still, the monk replied. Predictable. Obedient. The monk picked up a leaf that had fallen near his feet and placed it gently into the water. The leaf floated, turned, paused briefly in a slow-moving pocket, then drifted away. Do you see how it moves? The monk asked. Yes, the child said quietly. Does the river hate the leaf? No. Does it abandon it? The child watched carefully. No, it carries it. The monk nodded. And yet, he continued, many say the river takes things away. The child felt something stir in their chest. That's how it feels, the child said. Things leave. People leave. Moments leave. Yes, the monk said. They do. The child waited, expecting denial, correction, or comfort. But the monk offered none of those. Instead, he said, tell me, when the leaf floated away, did it stop existing? The child followed the leaf with their eyes until it vanished from sight. I don't know, the child said. Exactly, the monk replied. Not knowing is not the same as loss. The child fell silent. The monk continued, his voice steady, neither urgent nor distant. Fear is born when we mistake movement for disappearance, he said. We believe that if something changes form, it has been destroyed. The child's brow furrowed. But things do disappear, the child said. People die. Moments end. Yes, the monk said. Forms end. He placed his hand over his chest. But life does not end where form ends. The child looked at him, unsure whether to believe or question. The monk did not press the point. He knew some truths must first be felt, not understood. Tell me, the monk said, what troubles you about the river? The child hesitated, then spoke with the honesty only children possess. It never asks if I'm ready, the child said. It just keeps going. The monk nodded slowly. Yes, he said. Change rarely asks permission. The child's voice grew softer. I'm afraid that if I stop watching it, it will take something important while I'm not looking. The monk turned to the child fully now, eyes kind but clear. And what happens when you watch it constantly? He asked. The child thought. I feel tired and tense. The monk smiled gently. So, he said, whether you watch or not, the river flows. But only one of those choices exhausts you. The child stared at the water, realizing the truth of this without resistance. The monk leaned back slightly, resting against a smooth stone. Long ago, he said, I too feared this river. The child looked at him in surprise. You, the child asked. Yes, the monk replied. I once stood exactly where you are standing now. What changed? The child asked. The monk's gaze softened. I stopped asking the river to stay, he said, and started asking myself why I needed it to. The child felt something loosen inside. They sat together as clouds drifted overhead, reflected briefly on the water's surface before dissolving. Do you know, the monk continued, why the river appears restless? The child shook their head. Because you're watching it from the outside, the monk said. From the edge. The child frowned. Where else will I watch it from? The monk smiled. When you watch your own breath, he said, does it frighten you that it moves? No, the child said quickly. Why not? Because it's part of me. The monk nodded. One day, he said, you will see that the river is not separate from your life. That change is not something happening to you, but something happening as you. The child absorbed this slowly, like earth receiving rain. For the first time, the river did not feel like a threat. It still moved. It still refused to pause. But its movement no longer felt hostile. The monk stood once more. I will sit here again tomorrow, he said, and the next day, and the day after that. Why? The child asked. The monk smiled. Because the river will still be here, he said, and so will your questions. As the monk walked away, leaving soft footprints in the earth, the child remained by the river. But the child was no longer alone. Something unseen had joined them, a quiet presence, a sense that movement itself could be watched without fear. The river never stopped, and beside it, for the first time, the child felt that perhaps they did not need it to. Morning returned to the river quietly. Mist hovered just above the water's surface, softening the line between river and sky. The child arrived before the sun had fully risen, feet cold against the dew-soaked ground. The world felt hushed, as though it too were listening. The monk was already there. He sat on the same stone as the day before, posture unchanged, eyes open but resting. The river moved as it always had, yet the child noticed something new. In the early light, the water seemed gentler, less insistent. Or perhaps the child's eyes had changed. The child approached without speaking and sat nearby. For a while, neither said anything. The monk did not rush to teach. He understood that silence was often the doorway through which understanding entered. The child, too, had learned something from the previous day, not knowledge, but a subtle willingness to stay. At last, the monk spoke. "Tell me," he said, "what did you see yesterday after I left?" The child thought carefully. "I saw the river," the child replied, "but I also saw myself watching it." The monk smiled faintly. "And how did that feel?" "Less frightening," the child said, surprised by their own answer. "The river didn't change, but I didn't feel as tense." The monk nodded. "Good. That means the lesson has already begun." The child looked at him expectantly. "What lesson?" The monk reached down and picked up 2 handfuls of water from the river. He lifted his hands slowly, letting the water spill through his fingers and fall back into the flow. "Can you hold this water?" he asked. The child shook their head. "No. Why not?" "Because it slips away." The monk nodded again. "And yet," he said, "did you lose anything?" The child frowned. The water went back to the river. "Yes," the monk said softly. "Nothing was lost. Only your grip failed." The child sat with this. The monk continued. "Most suffering is born in this moment, when we confuse the inability to hold with the experience of loss." The child looked at their hands, imagining water slipping away. "But if we can't hold anything," the child asked, "what's the point of loving it, or caring about it?" The monk did not answer immediately. Instead, he stood and gestured for the child to follow. They walked slowly along the riverbank until they reached a place where smooth stones lined the edge, shaped by years of flowing water. "Touch this stone," the monk said. The child placed a hand on the stone. It was cool, solid. "It feels permanent," the child said. The monk smiled gently. "How old do you think it is?" "I don't know," the child replied. "Very old." "Yes," the monk said, "and yet it was not always this shape. The river has been touching it for longer than either of us can imagine." The monk pointed to faint grooves carved into the stone. "Is the stone being destroyed?" he asked. The child examined it more closely. "No," the child said slowly. "It's being shaped." The monk's eyes brightened. "Exactly," he said. "Change does not always mean loss. Often it means becoming." They returned to their place by the water. The monk sat, then spoke again, his voice steady and clear. "In the teachings of the awakened ones," he said, "there is a simple truth that frightens many before it frees them." The child leaned forward. "That truth," the monk continued, "is that nothing stays." The child felt a familiar tightening in the chest. The monk noticed. "Do not turn away yet," he said gently. "Stay with it." The child nodded, breathing slowly. "Everything that arises," the monk said, "also passes. This is not a mistake in the world. It is the way the world works." "But why?" the child asked. "Why can't good things stay?" The monk looked out at the river. "If the river stopped," he asked, "would it still be a river?" "No," the child said quietly. "If your breath stopped moving," the monk continued, "would life remain?" The child shook their head. "Movement," the monk said, "is not the enemy of life. It is its evidence." The child absorbed this in silence. The monk went on. "Pain does not come from the fact that things change. Pain comes from asking them not to." The child remembered moments of clinging, holding tighter, hoping effort could replace acceptance. "So, I'm the one causing the pain?" the child asked, almost accusingly. The monk smiled, not offended. "No," he said, "you're the one experiencing it." Cousin implie intention. Most suffering is not chosen, it is learned. The monk reached into his robe and took out a small cup made of clay. Imagine this cup, he said. You know it will one day crack. Knowing this, do you refuse to drink from it? The child shook their head. No, the child said. I would still use it. Why? The monk asked. Because it's useful now, the child said, and because I can enjoy it while it lasts. The monk nodded approvingly. Then why demand more from life than you demand from this cup, he asked. The question settled deeply. The monk continued, impermanence does not mean life is meaningless. It means every moment is alive. The child looked at the river again. The water from yesterday was gone, entirely gone, and yet the river remained. Is this river the same as yesterday? The monk asked. No, the child replied. It's different water. And is it still the river? The monk asked. Yes. The monk smiled. So too with you, he said. You're not the same as yesterday. And yet, you are here. The child felt something shift. For the first time, the idea that nothing stays did not feel like a threat. It felt like an explanation. But what about the things we love? The child asked softly. People, moments. The monk's expression softened. To love, he said, is not to freeze. It is to walk beside, knowing there will be parting. The child swallowed. That sounds painful, the child said. Yes, the monk agreed. And also beautiful. They sat together as the sunlight finally broke through the mist, scattering gold across the river surface. Imagine, the monk said, if sunsets lasted forever. Would you stop to watch them? The child considered this. Probably not. Impermanence, the monk said, is what gives rise to appreciation. The child exhaled slowly. So the river isn't cruel, the child said. It's just honest. The monk smiled broadly. Yes, he said, and honesty, though uncomfortable at first, is always kinder than illusion. The monk stood. Today's lesson is simple, he said. Do not ask life to stay. Ask yourself to stay present. The child nodded. As the monk walked away, the child remained by the river, watching the water move, not with fear but with attention. Nothing stayed, and for the first time, the child understood that this was not a flaw in life. It was its deepest truth. The child returned to the river with a new restlessness in the body. The previous lessons had softened something inside, yet they had also awakened a quiet resistance, an urge to test what had been heard. Understanding, the child sensed, was not the same as believing. And belief, without experience, felt fragile. The river flowed as it always had, indifferent to the child's inner debate. If nothing stays, the child thought, then perhaps it is better to make something stay. The idea arose gently at first, then grew stronger, as ideas often do when they promise safety. The child walked along the riverbank until a narrow bend appeared, where stones lay scattered as if waiting. The water here moved swiftly but not violently, slipping between rocks with practiced ease. This is a good place, the child decided. If the river can be slowed anywhere, it will be here. The child began gathering stones. Some were small and smooth, others larger and jagged. They were heavy enough to demand effort, light enough to be carried. One by one, the child placed them into the water, forming a rough barrier across the stream. At first, the river barely seemed to notice. Water slid around the stones, squeezing through gaps, laughing softly in its liquid language. The child frowned and added more stones, stacking them carefully, pressing them closer together. This time, the child muttered, "It will work." As the barrier grew, the water began to change its behavior. The flow slowed slightly, pooling behind stones. The child felt a spark of triumph. "There," the child said aloud. "See? You can be stopped." The river responded with silence, not agreement, but patience. Encouraged, the child worked harder. Muscles strained, fingers scraped against rough surfaces. The sun climbed higher, warming the child's back, while the stones grew slick beneath the hands. With each added stone, the pool behind the barrier grew deeper, heavier. The child stepped back to admire the effort. For the first time, the river seemed almost still. The surface trembled, but no longer rushed forward freely. The child's chest swelled with relief. Now, the child thought, nothing will be taken away. The child sat down beside the makeshift dam, watching the water gather. There was a strange comfort in the sight, like holding a breath and believing it could last forever. Minutes passed. The child noticed the water pressing more firmly against the stones, its surface rising inch by inch. Small streams began to slip through cracks the child had not noticed before. The child leaned forward, adjusting stones, plugging gaps with smaller rocks, mud, even handfuls of leaves. "Stay," the child whispered. "Just stay." But the river did not stay. It adapted. Water found new paths, spilling over the top of the barrier in thin silver ribbons. The pool behind the stones grew restless, swirling with quiet urgency. The child's heart began to race. "No," the child said sharply, standing up. "Not yet." The child rushed to reinforce the dam, stacking stones higher, pushing harder, ignoring the ache in the arms and the sting of scraped skin. For a brief moment, the barrier held. Then, without warning, a stone shifted. The child froze. A low sound emerged, a deep, resonant groan as water surged through the opening. Another stone slipped, then another. In an instant, the dam collapsed. Water rushed forward with renewed force, sweeping stones aside as if they had never been placed there. The pool vanished, redistributed back into motion. Leaves scattered, mud dissolved. The river reclaimed its path. The child stumbled backward, splashed by cold water. The river was flowing freely again. Breathing hard, the child stared at the wreckage, stones scattered downstream, the careful arrangement undone. All that effort, all that hope, gone. Anger rose first. "That's not fair," the child shouted. "I worked so hard." The river did not respond. The anger softened into frustration, then into something heavier. Exhaustion. The child sank onto the ground, hands trembling, chest tight. "I just wanted it to stay," the child whispered, voice breaking. "Just for a little while." The river flowed on, neither cruel nor kind, simply faithful to its nature. The monk appeared quietly, as he often did. He stood at a distance at first, watching the child and the river, seeing both clearly. The child noticed him and turned away, ashamed. "I tried," the child said without looking up. "I really tried. I can see that," the monk replied gently. The monk approached and sat beside the child, not touching the stones, not disturbing the water. "Why did you do this?" the monk asked. The child hesitated, then answered honestly. "I thought," the child said, "if I could stop the river, I wouldn't feel afraid anymore." The monk nodded slowly. "And do you feel less afraid now?" he asked. The child shook their head, tears welling. "I feel worse," the child admitted. "Tired and foolish." The monk was silent for a moment. Then he said, "This is an important lesson." The child looked up. "You believed," the monk continued, "that stillness would give you safety." The child nodded. "But what did it give you instead?" the monk asked. The child looked at scraped hands, aching arms, scattered stones. "Pain," the child said quietly. The monk smiled, not unkindly. "Yes," he said, "because you try to force the river to become something it is not." The monk picked up one of the stones and turned it over in his hand. "These stones," he said, "are not wrong." The child frowned. "And neither are your hands," the monk continued. "But when we use the wrong tools for the wrong task, suffering follows." The child stared at the river. "I thought stopping it would make things better," the child said. "But everything just fell apart." The monk nodded. "Attachment often disguises itself as care," he said. "We tell ourselves we are protecting something. In truth, we are protecting ourselves from fear." The child felt a sharp recognition. "When you tried to stop the river," the monk went on, "did you do it for the river? Or for your own comfort?" The answer came quickly, painfully. "For myself," the child whispered. The monk placed the stone back on the ground. "Attachment," he said, "is the desire to possess what was never meant to belong to us." The child's gaze softened. "So if you're trying to hold things still," the child began, "creates more suffering," the monk finished gently. They sat together, listening to the water settle back into its natural rhythm. Notice something, the monk said. After the dam broke, did the river become angry? The child watched carefully. No. Did it punish you? The monk asked. No. It simply continued, the monk said. Unburdened. The child sighed. I wish I could do that, the child said. Just continue. The monk smiled. You can, he said. But first, you must stop building dams in your heart. The child thought of memories clung to too tightly. Expectations stacked like stones. Fears disguised as hope. Letting go feels like losing, the child said. The monk shook his head. No, he said. Letting go feels like losing control. Those are not the same. The river flowed past, carrying stones, leaves, fragments of the broken dam. Everything included, nothing rejected. The monk stood. Today, he said, you learn not through words, but through effort. The child nodded slowly. The river had taught its lesson without a single sentence. As the sun lowered and the light softened, the child remained by the water, not trying to stop it, not trying to shape it, just watching it move. The river never stopped, and the child, aching but wiser, began to understand why holding it still had never been the answer. The river was quiet again, but the child was not. Long after the monk had left, the child remained seated on the damp earth, staring at the scattered stones downstream. What had once been carefully arranged now lay in careless disorder, some half buried in mud, others already disappearing beneath the water's patient touch. The river flowed as if nothing unusual had happened. That, more than anything, unsettled the child. The collapse of the dam had felt enormous, loud, sudden, humiliating. It had carried effort, hope, and fear all at once. Yet the river treated it as a brief interruption, no more significant than a fallen leaf or a passing shadow. The child felt small. If it meant nothing to the river, the child thought, then what did it mean to me? The answer was immediate and uncomfortable. It meant everything. The child stood and walked slowly along the bank, following the path of the stones that had once formed the barrier. Some were lodged against roots, others resting quietly in shallow pools. The river had not destroyed them. It had simply redistributed them. This realization stirred a faint confusion. I thought it would all be washed away, the child whispered. But it's still here, just not where I put it. The child bent down and picked up one of the stones. It was smoother than before, its edges softened by the brief violence of water. The dam had broken, but something had changed. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. There had been a time in the child's life when something precious had been held together by sheer will. A relationship, a dream, a version of the future imagined so clearly it felt real. The child had worked tirelessly to keep it intact, ignoring the cracks, tightening the grip whenever things began to shift. And then, without warning, it had collapsed. Not slowly, not gently, but all at once. The pain of that moment returned sharply, like cold water against the skin. The child sank back down onto the ground, stone still in hand. When it broke, the child whispered, I thought everything was ruined. The river continued its steady song. The monk returned as the sun tilted westward, casting long reflections across the water. This time, the child noticed him sooner. Perhaps the child had learned something about watching. The monk did not speak immediately. He walked to the place where the dam had been, studying the river's renewed freedom, the softened stones, the widened path of water. It broke suddenly, the monk said at last. The child nodded. I didn't even see it coming. The monk sat beside the child. That is often how it happens, he said. The child clenched the stone in their hand. Why didn't it break slowly? The child asked. Why did it have to collapse all at once? The monk looked at the river. Tell me, he said, when you were building the dam, did you listen to the water? The child hesitated. I listened to myself, the child admitted. To what I wanted. The monk nodded. The river gave many signs, he said gently. The rising water, the pressure, the small streams escaping through cracks. The child's shoulders slumped. I saw those, the child said. I just thought I could fix them. The monk's voice softened further. Yes, he said. We almost always think that. They sat quietly as the river shimmered in the afternoon light. When a dam breaks, the monk continued, "People say the river is destructive." The child nodded. It felt destructive. "But look closely," the monk said. The child followed his gaze. The water flowed more evenly now, less strained. The riverbed seemed wider, its movement more harmonious. Where the dam had once forced tension, there was now balance. Did the river destroy? The monk asked. Or did it release what had been trapped? The child swallowed. "It released it," the child said slowly. The monk nodded. "What was trapped," he continued, "was not the river. It was your expectation." The stone felt heavier in the child's hand. "When we resist change," the monk said, "we create pressure. When pressure builds without release, collapse becomes inevitable." The child remembered the moment the dam broke, the suddenness, the violence, the helplessness. "That's why it hurts so much," the child said quietly. "Not because it changed, but because it changed all at once." The monk smiled gently. "Yes," he said, "sudden change feels cruel only when we have been refusing gentle change for a long time." The words struck deep. The child looked down at the stone again, turning it over. "So the river didn't break the dam to punish me," the child said. "No," the monk replied. "The river simply returned to its nature." The child felt a wave of relief, followed by sadness. "I thought I was protecting something," the child said. "But I was just afraid." The monk nodded. "Fear often builds dams," he said. "Not because it is evil, but because it does not know how to trust flow." The river passed them quietly, carrying bits of foam, small branches, reflections of clouds. Everything moving together without effort. The child exhaled deeply. When the dam broke, the child said, "I felt like I failed." The monk turned to the child. "Did the river fail when it flooded the stones?" he asked. "No," the child replied. "Did the stone fail when it was reshaped by water?" the monk continued. "No." "Then why do you call this failure?" the monk asked gently. The child was silent. "Breaking," the monk said softly, "is not the same as ending." The child felt tears rise, not from pain this time, but from recognition. "I was afraid that if things fell apart," the child said, "I wouldn't survive it." The monk placed his palm lightly on the ground. "You did survive," he said, "and you are still here." The child nodded slowly. When the dam broke, the monk continued, "You saw what happens when control collapses." The child nodded again. "But what you are beginning to see now," the monk said, "is what remains after control is gone." The child looked around. The river, the stones, the sky, the breath moving quietly in the chest. "I'm still here," the child repeated, almost surprised. The monk smiled. "Yes," he said, and lighter. The child realized it was true. The body still ached, the hands were scraped, but the tightness in the chest had eased. When the river breaks the dam, the monk said, it is not declaring war. It is restoring balance. The child stared at the water. "So when my life breaks apart," the child began, "it may not be punishment," the monk finished. "It may be correction." The words settled gently, without judgment. They sat until the sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the riverbank. The child placed the stone back on the ground, not into the river, not into a wall, just where it rested naturally. For the first time, the child did not feel the urge to rebuild. The river flowed freely. The dam was gone, and in the quiet aftermath of collapse, the child began to understand a deeper truth. That sometimes what feels like destruction is simply life refusing to be imprisoned. The child awoke before dawn with a familiar heaviness in the chest. The river could not be seen from where the child slept, yet its presence lingered, felt rather than heard. Something within had been unsettled by the breaking of the dam, not because it had happened, but because of what it revealed. The child sensed that the river had not merely undone a structure of stones. It had exposed a habit of the heart. By the time the first light touched the valley, the child was already walking toward the riverbank. Mist hovered low again, drifting like breath released by the earth. The river moved quietly through it, patient and unhurried, as if nothing in the world had ever resisted it. The child sat at the edge, knees drawn close, watching the current slip past. I thought I understood, the child whispered, but it still hurts. The river, faithful to its nature, did not answer. Footsteps approached from behind. The monk arrived without ceremony, his presence gentle but unmistakable. "You came early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," the child replied. The monk nodded. The mind often wakes before the body when it senses truth nearby. They sat together, facing the water. For a long time, neither spoke. The child felt the ache return, not in the muscles this time, but deeper. It was the ache of recognition, the quiet understanding that suffering had not come from the river, nor from the breaking of the dam, but from something closer and harder to accept. "I keep thinking," the child said finally, "that if I could just accept things faster, it wouldn't hurt so much." The monk turned to the child. "And what happens when you try to accept quickly?" he asked. The child hesitated. "I feel like I'm forcing myself, like I'm pretending." The monk smiled gently. "Yes, acceptance cannot be rushed. It is not another form of control." The child sighed. "Then what am I supposed to do with the pain?" The monk picked up a long blade of grass and held it between his fingers. "When the wind blows," he said, "does the grass resist?" "No," the child said. "Does it decide to bend?" The monk continued. "No, it simply responds," the monk said, "and when the wind passes, it stands again." The child watched the grass sway lightly in the breeze. "But I'm not grass," the child said. "I remember things. I want things to be different." "Yes," the monk said, "and that is where the pain begins." The child frowned. "Wanting things to be different causes pain?" The monk nodded. "Not wanting in itself," he said, "but arguing with reality does." The child looked back at the river. When the river flowed, the monk continued. "And you built the dam. What were you truly fighting?" The child thought carefully. "I was fighting the river," the child said. The monk shook his head gently. "No," he said, "you were fighting what the river revealed." The child felt a tightening in the chest. "What did it reveal?" the child asked quietly. "That nothing," the monk replied, "was ever guaranteed to stay." The words landed softly but carried weight. The monk went on. "The river did not create impermanence. It only made it visible." The child's gaze softened. "So the pain," the child said slowly, "comes from seeing the truth and not wanting it." The monk smiled. "Yes," he said, "pain arises when the mind says, 'This should not be happening,' while life says, 'It already is.'" They sat in silence as the river continued its steady passage. "I thought," the child said after a while, "that fighting meant strength." The monk nodded. "Many believe that. But now," the child continued, "it just feels exhausting." The monk's eyes were kind. "Because strength," he said, "is not found in resistance to what is, but in intimacy with it." The child turned toward him. "Intimacy, to be close to reality," the monk said, "to stop standing at a distance, judging, demanding, fearing." The child thought of how they had watched the river from the edge, measuring, testing, attempting to control. "I never really met the river," the child said. "I was always trying to change it." The monk nodded. "When we fight life," he said, "we never actually touch it." The child felt a quiet sadness at this realization. "So much effort," the child whispered. "So much fear." The monk placed a hand lightly on the ground. "Fighting reality," he said, "is like pushing against the earth and expecting it to move." The child almost laughed, then stopped. "I've been doing that," the child said. "Yes," the monk replied, "and the earth has remained." The monk stood slowly and walked to the water's edge. He placed one foot into the river, then the other, standing calmly as the current flowed around his ankles. "Look," he said. The child watched, heart tightening with concern. "Aren't you afraid?" the child asked. The monk smiled. "Afraid of what?" "Of being swept away." The monk shook his head. "I am standing where the river is shallow," he said, "and I am not fighting it." The water moved around him, parting gently, then rejoining downstream. "When you fight," the monk said, "the river becomes an enemy. When you stand with awareness, it becomes a teacher." The child felt a subtle shift inside. The monk stepped back onto the bank and sat again. "The pain you feel," he said, is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are waking up. The child looked at him, surprised. Waking up hurts? The child asked. The monk nodded. Yes, he said, because it ends illusions. The child thought of all the moments spent wishing things had stayed the same. So the pain, the child said, isn't punishment. No, the monk replied. It is friction. Between what? The child asked. Between what is the monk said and what you believe should be. The child closed their eyes, feeling the truth of this in the body. What happens? The child asked softly. When I stop fighting? The monk smiled. You will still feel pain, he said, but you will stop suffering. The child frowned. Aren't they the same? The monk shook his head. Pain, he said, is the sensation of change. Suffering is the story we tell about it. The river shimmered as sunlight broke through the thinning mist. When the dam broke, the monk continued. There was pain. Stones shifted. Water surged. But suffering, he went on, came from believing it should not have happened. The child breathed deeply. So the river never hurt me, the child said. No, the monk replied. You hurt yourself by standing against it. The words were not accusatory, only clear. The child watched the water again, this time without tension in the shoulders. For the first time, the river did not feel like something to endure. It felt like something to understand. I don't know how to stop fighting, the child admitted. The monk nodded. You don't stop fighting by deciding to stop, he said. You stop when you see clearly that there is nothing to fight. The child let this sink in. As the sun climbed higher, warmth spread across the riverbank. Birds called from the trees. Life continued, unconcerned with the child's internal struggle. I think, the child said slowly, I've been tired for a long time. The monk smiled. Yes, he said, because you have been pushing against the current of your own life. They sat together, watching the river move freely. The river never stopped, and for the first time, the child felt the possibility that peace did not lie in changing the flow, but in stepping out of the struggle against it. The child no longer hurried to the river. This in itself was new. In the past, every visit had been charged with urgency, an anxious need to understand, to fix, to change something either in the water or within the self. Now, the child approached more slowly, steps unmeasured, breath unforced, as if arriving rather than seeking. The river was there as always. It flowed through the valley with the same quiet persistence, neither greeting nor ignoring the child. It simply continued, carrying the morning light on its surface like a moving mirror. The monk sat a short distance away, cross-legged beneath the fig tree. He did not call out. He did not gesture. His stillness felt like an invitation that required no response. The child chose a place near the water and sat. At first, nothing happened. The mind, long accustomed to movement, immediately began to stir. Thoughts arose like insects over the surface of a pond. Memories of the broken dam, echoes of past pain, questions about what might come next. The child noticed them all, and for the first time, did not chase them. The river filled the space between thoughts, not by force, but by constancy. Its sound was neither loud nor soft. It simply was, a steady presence beneath everything else. The child remembered the monk's words from the previous day. When you fight life, you never actually touch it. So the child did not fight. Minutes passed, perhaps longer. Time felt different here, loosening its grip. The child's shoulders gradually lowered. The jaw softened. The breath found its own rhythm without instruction. The river flowed. A leaf drifted into view, spinning gently as it moved downstream. The child followed it with the eyes, noticing how it paused briefly in a small eddy before releasing and continuing on. In the past, the child might have thought, it will be gone soon. Now, the thought did not arise. Instead, there was only watching. The monk opened his eyes and glanced toward the child. He noticed a shift immediately, not as an achievement, but as a quiet alignment. The child was no longer trying to understand the river. The child was simply with it. The monk said nothing. Silence deepened, not empty, but full of water moving, birds calling from afar, wind brushing leaves together. Even a child's own heartbeat became noticeable, steady, and unremarkable. The mind attempted, briefly, to label the experience. "This feels peaceful," it said. The child noticed the thought and let it pass. Peace, the child sensed, did not need to be named to exist. The river continued. Something subtle began to change. The child realized that the river had never demanded attention. It had never asked to be understood. It had never required agreement or acceptance. It flowed whether watched or not. And yet, sitting here, watching without resistance, the child felt something unexpected. A sense of rest. Not the rest of sleep or escape, but the rest of no longer arguing with the moment. The monk finally spoke, his voice low and unintrusive. "What do you notice?" he asked. The child did not answer right away. Words felt heavy, unnecessary. When the child did speak, it was slowly. "I notice that I don't need to do anything," the child said. The monk smiled gently. "Yes." The child continued, surprised by the clarity forming in the chest. "The river moves," the child said, "but I don't have to move with it." The monk nodded. "And yet," he said, "you are not separate from it." The child turned to him, curious. "How can I not move?" the child asked. "If everything is moving..." The monk gestured toward the child's chest. "Your breath moves," he said. "Your thoughts move. Your body changes." "Yes," the child said. And yet, the monk continued. "There is something in you that is aware of all that movement." The child felt a quiet recognition. That awareness, the monk said, does not rush. It does not cling. It does not fear change. The child closed the eyes briefly, turning attention inward. Not searching, just noticing. Thoughts arose. Sensations shifted. Sounds came and went. And beneath all of it, there was something steady. Watching. The child opened the eyes again, looking at the river. "It's strange," the child said softly. "The river hasn't slowed, but I feel calmer." The monk nodded. "Stillness," he said, "does not mean the absence of movement. It means the absence of resistance." The words settled gently. The child remembered how, before, watching the river had felt unbearable, each passing moment a reminder of loss. Now, watching felt almost intimate, like listening to a trusted friend speak without interruption. "I used to think," the child said, "that peace meant things staying the same." The monk smiled. "Many do. But now," the child continued, "it feels like peace is staying with things as they change." The monk's eyes shone. "Yes," he said, "that is the beginning of wisdom." They sat together again, allowing silence to return. The child noticed how the river contained both speed and gentleness. Some currents rushed over stones, quick and bright. Others moved slowly, deep and dark, yet all were part of the same flow. So is life, the child realized. Moments of joy, moments of sorrow, acceleration and pause, arrival and departure. None of it required permission to exist. The child felt a subtle gratitude, not directed at the river, not at the monk, but at the simple fact of being present. "I don't feel afraid right now," the child said quietly. The monk nodded. "Fear cannot survive long," he said, "when it is fully seen." The child thought of all the times fear had been fueled by imagination, by stories of what might happen, what could be lost, what should not change. Here, beside the river, there was only what was happening. Water moving, breath moving, life unfolding. "What if the fear comes back?" the child asked. The monk smiled. "It will," he said. The child tensed slightly. "And when it does," the monk continued, "sit with it as you sit with the river." "Without fixing it?" the child asked. "Yes," the monk said, "without fixing it." The child considered this. "So, I don't have to make fear go away," the child said. "I just have to stop fighting it." The monk nodded. "When you stop fighting," he said, "fear becomes another current, noticeable, temporary, and unable to drown you." The child breathed deeply, feeling the truth of this not as an idea, but as an experience. The river shimmered as the sun climbed higher, light dancing across the surface. The child remained seated, not counting time, not measuring progress. Just sitting, just watching. The river never stopped, but for the first time, the child understood something profound. That stillness was not something to be found by stopping life, but something that emerged naturally, when one stopped trying to stop it. The realization did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded the way dawn does, quietly, almost unnoticed, until the light was already everywhere. The child had been sitting beside the river for many mornings now. Sometimes the monk was present, sometimes not. Sometimes they spoke, often they did not. The child had learned that silence was not the absence of teaching, but one of its deepest forms. On this particular morning, the river looked different. Rain had fallen upstream during the night. The water moved faster now, darker and fuller, carrying small branches and clusters of leaves. The sound was deeper, more forceful, yet not chaotic. It felt purposeful, as if the river were speaking more loudly, but saying the same thing. The child watched closely. This is not the same river, the child thought. And yet, just as quickly, another thought followed. It is still the river. The child frowned slightly, sensing something important hiding in this contradiction. When the monk arrived, the child did not wait for him to speak. The river has changed, the child said, but it hasn't become something else. The monk sat down slowly, adjusting his robe. Yes, he said, now you're beginning to see. The child gestured toward the water. Yesterday it was calm. Today it is strong. Tomorrow it may be shallow again, the child said. But we still call it the same river. The monk smiled. And do you call yourself the same person you were as a child? He asked. The question caught the child off guard. I think so, the child said. The monk raised an eyebrow gently. Your body has changed, he said. Your thoughts have changed. Your fears have changed. The child nodded. And yet, the monk continued. You say this is me. The child felt something stir. So, the child said slowly, I am like the river. The monk nodded. Yes, he said, but most people believe they are the water, not the river. The child frowned. What does that mean? The monk picked up a small cup and dipped it into the flowing water, then lifted it up. Look, he said. The water shimmered briefly in the cup. This water, the monk said, will soon be poured back into the river. It will not remain in this form. He tilted the cup, returning the water to the flow. But the river remains, he continued. The child watched closely. When people identify themselves with the water, the monk said, they suffer every time it changes. The child thought of moods that came and went, identities once clung to and later outgrown, moments of joy followed by grief. I've been afraid of changing, the child said quietly, because I thought change meant losing myself. The monk nodded. That fear is very common, he said, because most people confuse form with essence. The river surged past them, powerful yet untroubled. Tell me, the monk asked, what part of you noticed the river yesterday? The child hesitated. I did, the child said. And what part of you is noticing it now? The monk asked. The child paused. I am, the child replied again. The monk smiled. Is that I the same? He asked. The child closed the eyes briefly. Thoughts moved. Sensations shifted. The breath rose and fell. Yet something remained. Yes, the child said softly. It feels the same. The monk nodded. That, he said, is the river. The child opened the eyes, heart beating slightly faster. So my thoughts, the child said, are like the water. Yes. And my emotions, the child asked. Also water, the monk replied. Sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent. And my roles, the child continued. My past, my fears. All water, the monk said. The child felt a strange relief wash through the body. Then what am I? The child asked. The monk looked at the river, then back at the child. You are the space in which change happens, he said. The continuity beneath movement. The words resonated deeply. For so long, the child had believed that stability meant sameness. That to remain whole, nothing must shift. But the river offered a different truth. Continuity did not require stillness. The child watched as a large branch passed by, momentarily caught against a stone, then released. That branch, the monk said, following the child's gaze, was once part of a tree. The child nodded. It did not stop being wood when it fell. The monk continued. It did not stop existing when it entered the river. It just changed form, the child said. Yes, the monk replied. The child felt a tightening in the chest loosen. I've been afraid of endings, the child admitted. But maybe I've been misunderstanding them. The monk nodded. Endings are only frightening, he said, when we believe they erase what came before. The river flowed on, carrying reflections of clouds that appeared, shifted, and dissolved. Yesterday, the child said, I felt calm. Today, I feel uncertain again. The child looked at the monk, almost apologetic. Does that mean I'm going backward? The monk smiled gently. Does the river go backward, he asked, when its surface ripples? The child shook their head. No, the monk said. It simply expresses what is happening. The child breathed out slowly. So, I don't have to stay peaceful, the child said. I just have to stop believing that peace means one permanent feeling. The monk's eyes softened. Yes, he said, peace is not the absence of waves. It is knowing you are not the waves. The child sat quietly, letting the words sink into the body rather than the mind. The river was louder now, swollen with rain. Yet the child felt no urge to stop it, slow it, or shape it. Something fundamental had shifted. The child no longer watched the river as something external, something that symbolized life. The child watched it as life itself. And somehow, as the boundaries softened, the fear softened with it. I used to think, the child said slowly, that if I changed too much, I would disappear. The monk nodded. And now, he asked. And now, the child continued. It feels like change is how I continue. The monk smiled, deeply satisfied. Yes, he said, that is why the river never stops. The child looked at the flowing water, noticing how even in its strongest rush, it did not seem strained. It doesn't cling to its past shape, the child said. No, the monk replied. And because of that, it never fears the future. The sun rose higher, light breaking through clouds, illuminating the water in shifting patterns. The child felt something settle into place. Not an answer, but a trust. A trust that whatever feelings arose, whatever forms appeared or vanished, something essential would remain. The river was never the same, and yet it was always the river. For the first time, the child understood this not as a thought, but as a lived truth. That identity was not something to be defended against change, but something revealed through it. The child did not come to the river with a question that morning. This too was new. There had been a time when every step toward the water carried an unspoken demand. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to stop the pain. Tell me how to stay safe. Now, the child arrived with empty hands and an open posture, as if something important had already been put down along the way. The river flowed, broad and steady, its surface catching the early light in quiet ripples. It neither rushed nor hesitated. It did not appear calm because it was controlled. It appeared calm because it was free. The child sat near the edge, feeling the cool earth beneath the legs, noticing the simple sensation of contact. Breath moved in and out without instruction. Thoughts drifted by, fewer now, softer. The monk arrived and took his place nearby. For a long while, they simply watched. Finally, the child spoke. I think I understand something, the child said, but I'm afraid of misunderstanding it. The monk smiled. Say it anyway. The child looked at the river. I used to believe that peace meant things going the way I wanted, the child said, or at least not changing in ways I couldn't handle. The monk nodded. But now, the child continued, it feels like peace has nothing to do with outcomes. The monk's eyes brightened slightly. Go on, he said. The child searched for words carefully. It feels like peace happens when I stop trying to manage everything, the child said. When I stop gripping life so tightly. The monk nodded again. Yes, he said, you're touching something very important. The child frowned. But if I stop controlling things, won't everything fall apart? The monk did not answer immediately. Instead, he stood and walked toward the riverbank. He pointed to a section where water flowed swiftly between two large stones. Look there, he said. The child followed his gaze. That water is moving quickly, the monk said. Do you think it would flow better if you told it how? The child smiled faintly. No. And yet, the monk continued, people spend their lives trying to instruct their own lives in the same way. The child felt a quiet laugh rise, not from humor, but from recognition. I've been doing that, the child said. Yes, the monk replied. We all do. They returned to their seats. Control, the monk said, often feels like responsibility. The child nodded. But control is not care, the monk continued. It is fear wearing the mask of duty. The word struck gently but firmly. The child thought of all the times they had tried to anticipate every possible outcome, rehearsing responses, preparing for loss long before it arrived. I thought controlling things would protect me, the child said softly. And did it? The monk asked. The child shook their head. It just made me tired, the child said. The monk smiled kindly. Yes, he said, because control asks you to carry the weight of the future. The river shimmered as a breeze passed. When you release control, the monk continued, you are not abandoning life. You are trusting it. The child looked uncertain. Trust feels risky. The monk nodded. Only because you believe you are separate from the river. The child remembered the earlier lesson, that they were not the water, but the river itself. If I am the river, the child said slowly, then I don't need to manage the flow. The monk smiled broadly. Exactly, he said. The child felt a quiet opening in the chest. But what about responsibility? The child asked. What about choices? The monk nodded thoughtfully. Releasing control does not mean passivity, he said. It means responding instead of forcing. The child considered this. So I still act, the child said, just without trying to guarantee results. Yes, the monk replied. Action without attachment. The child had heard those words before, but they had never felt so clear. The monk picked up a small stick and drew a line in the sand. This, he said, is control. Then he smoothed the line away with his foot. And this, he continued, is participation. The child watched closely. Control tries to dominate the future, the monk said. Participation listens to the present. The child felt the difference in the body immediately. One tense, the other open. They sat quietly again, letting the river speak in its steady language. I don't feel peaceful all the time, the child admitted. Sometimes fear still comes. The monk nodded. Peace is not a permanent mood, he said. It is a relationship with experience. The child let this sink in. So even when fear arises, the child said, I don't have to lose peace. Yes, the monk replied, because peace is not the absence of fear. It is the absence of resistance. The river carried a cluster of leaves past them, some spinning, some gliding smoothly. The child smiled faintly. I don't need to control this, the child said, watching the leaves. They'll go where they go. The monk nodded. And you? He asked. The child inhaled deeply. I'll go where I go, the child said. But I don't have to fight the journey. The monk's expression softened with approval. They sat together as the sun rose higher, warming the earth and water alike. For the first time, the child noticed how effortlessness had its own strength. The river did not strain, yet it shaped valleys. It did not plan, yet arrived. Letting go of control, the monk said, does not make you weak. The child nodded. It makes you available, the monk continued. Available to what is actually happening, not what you wish were happening. The child felt a gentle gratitude. I think, the child said slowly, I've been trying to live ahead of myself. The monk smiled. Yes, he said, and now you are beginning to live where you are. They sat in silence again. The river flowed on, unchanged by the child's realization, yet somehow more intimate than ever. The child did not feel the urge to stop it, did not feel the urge to shape it, did not feel the need to be anything other than present. The river never stopped, and for the first time, the child understood. That peace was not something to be achieved through effort, but something that naturally appeared, when the need to control finally dissolved. The river looked different when crossing became possible. Until now, the child had watched from the bank, learning, observing, releasing. The lessons had softened fear and loosened control, but they had not yet demanded action. The river had been a teacher at a safe distance. This morning, the distance felt smaller. The child stood at the edge where the water widened, the current steady but unmistakable. The stones beneath the surface were visible in places, blurred in others. Sunlight glimmered and broke apart as it touched the flow, turning certainty into shimmer. The monk stood beside the child, quiet as ever. "You have been sitting with the river," the monk said. "Watching it, listening." The child nodded. "Now," the monk continued, "there is something different before you." The child swallowed. "Crossing." The word formed in the mind without being spoken. Crossing meant entering what had once been feared, not just observing change, but trusting it enough to step into it. The child felt the old sensation return, the tightening in the chest, the subtle pull backward. "I'm not sure I'm ready," the child said softly. The monk nodded. Fear always speaks when readiness is near. The child looked down at the water. It did not look dangerous. It did not look safe either. It simply was. "What if I lose my footing?" the child asked. "What if the current is stronger than it looks? What if I'm carried somewhere I didn't plan to go?" Each question felt reasonable. Each one carried weight. The monk listened without interruption. "When you built the dam," he said at last, "you feared being carried away." The child nodded. "And when the dam broke," the monk continued, "you feared collapse." Again, the child nodded. "Now," the monk said, "you fear entry." The child exhaled. "It feels different," the child said. "This time, I'm not trying to control the river. I just don't know if I can trust it." The monk smiled gently. "Fear does not always come from resistance," he said. "Sometimes it comes from humility." The child looked at him, surprised. "Humility?" the child asked. "Yes," the monk said. "The recognition that you are not stronger than the river and do not need to be." The child felt something soften in that. They stood in silence as the water passed before them, steady and unhurried. "Do you know," the monk asked, "why stepping in feels more frightening than watching?" The child thought. "Because watching doesn't change anything," the child said. "Stepping in does." The monk nodded. "To step in," he said, "is to accept that you cannot remain untouched." The child's heart beat faster. "So far," the monk continued, "you have learned to sit with change, to understand it, to release the urge to control it." The child nodded again. "But life," the monk said, "does not only ask for understanding. It asks for participation." The child felt the truth of this immediately. Understanding had brought calm. Participation demandait courage. "I'm afraid," the child admitted, voice barely above a whisper, "that once I step in, I won't be able to go back." The monk turned to the child fully. "That," he said gently, "is not fear of the river." The child looked up. "That is fear of transformation," the monk continued. "Fear of not being the same." The child stared at the water. "I've already changed," the child said slowly. "Yes," the monk replied, "and yet part of you still hopes to keep one foot on the shore." The child felt exposed, not judged but clearly seen. The river flowed, indifferent to hesitation. The monk stepped closer to the edge and pointed to a shallow place where the current was visible but manageable. "You do not cross by leaping," he said. "You cross by stepping." The child looked at the place he indicated. "Even so," the child said, "the fear doesn't go away." The monk smiled. "It does not need to," he said. "Fear is not a command. It is a signal." "A signal of what?" the child asked. "That something matters," the monk replied. They stood quietly. The child noticed something new. Fear did not feel like an enemy anymore. It felt like a trembling companion, uncertain but honest. "Before," the child said, "fear made me build dams." The monk nodded. "And now?" he asked. "And now," the child continued, "it just tells me I'm about to enter something real." The monk's smile deepened. "Yes," he said, "that is fear in its rightful place." The child removed their sandals and placed them on the ground. The earth was cool beneath bare feet. The monk watched without comment. The child stepped closer to the water's edge, toes brushing the surface. The current curled gently around them, cool and alive. The sensation sent a quick surge through the body. Not panic, not calm, but alert presence. The child paused. The river did not pull. It did not push. It waited in its own way. What if I'm swept away? The child asked again, not expecting an answer this time. The monk spoke softly. Then you will be somewhere else, he said. The child let out a small, breathless laugh. That's exactly what scares me. The monk nodded. Yes, he said, because the mind loves familiarity, even when familiarity hurts. The child felt the truth of this deeply. I've stayed on shores that were painful, the child said, just because they were known. The monk looked at the child with quiet compassion. Many do, he said. The child took a slow breath. The river shimmered in the light, offering no guarantees. I don't know what's on the other side, the child said. The monk's voice was steady. No one ever does, he said. That is why it is called trust. The child stood there, feeling fear, feeling readiness, feeling the trembling edge between what had been and what might be. Finally, the child spoke. Not to the monk, not to the river, but to the truth itself. I'm afraid, the child said, but I'm more afraid of staying where I am. The monk nodded. That, he said, is how you know it is time. The child lifted one foot. The water wrapped around the ankle, cool and firm. The ground beneath shifted slightly, reminding the child that stillness was no longer available in the same way. The child did not move further. Not yet, but something had changed. The fear was still there, but it no longer said don't. It said pay attention. The child stood at the threshold, heart open, breath steady, aware that crossing was not about bravery, but about honesty. The river never stopped, and at its edge, the child understood that fear was not a wall to overcome. It was a doorway, asking to be entered with awareness. The child stood in the river longer than expected. Water pressed gently against the ankles, cool and insistent, wrapping the body in a quiet reminder. You are here now. The shore behind felt farther away, not in distance but in meaning. What had once been solid certainty now felt like a memory already loosening its grip. The monk remained on the bank, neither urging nor restraining. Do not hurry, he said softly. The river does not. The child nodded, eyes fixed on the moving surface. The current slid past, neither violent nor passive, tracing invisible paths around stones and submerged roots. It moved with a confidence that did not need proof. I can feel it pulling, the child said. The monk smiled. Yes, that is its nature. The child swallowed. If I fight it, I know what happens. Yes, the monk replied. You already learned that lesson with the dam. The child took another step forward. The water rose to the calves, the pressure stronger now, unmistakable. Balance demanded attention. Each muscle adjusted instinctively, responding rather than planning. The child wobbled slightly. Fear surged. I'm losing control, the child said quickly. The monk's voice remained calm. No, he said, you are losing the illusion of control. The distinction landed sharply and truthfully. The child steadied, spreading weight evenly, knees soft, breath slow. The river did not demand force. It demanded presence. Look at your feet, the monk said. The child looked down. The stones beneath the water were uneven, some firm, some slippery. Trying to command them would be useless. Feeling them, adjusting to them, this was the only way forward. Do not try to stand against the river, the monk continued. Stand with it. The child angled the body slightly downstream, allowing the current to pass rather than collide. Instantly, the strain lessened. Balance returned. The child exhaled, surprised. It feels easier, the child said. The monk nodded. When you stop arguing with what is happening, effort transforms into cooperation. The child took another step. The water reached the knees now, tugging gently but persistently. The sensation was no longer alarming. It was instructive. The child laughed softly, an unplanned sound, light and brief. I thought letting the current carry me meant giving up, the child said. The monk shook his head. It means giving in to reality. The child felt something click into place. Giving up had always sounded like defeat. Giving in, this felt different. This felt honest. The child shifted weight again, this time intentionally letting the current support rather than oppose. The river responded immediately, lifting, guiding, participating. For a moment, the child felt unsteady, not because of danger, but because of unfamiliar trust. "I don't know where it's taking me," the child said. The monk smiled. "Neither does the river. It only knows how to move." The child glanced back toward the bank. The sandals lay where they had been left. The shore looked peaceful, unchanged. Yet something in the child knew. Returning there unchanged was no longer possible. The child turned forward again. The river deepened gradually. Water brushed the thighs, then the waist. The current spoke more clearly now, not in words, but in sensation, direction, momentum, invitation. The child hesitated. "This is the deepest part," the monk said. "Here, standing still will tire you." The child felt it immediately. Muscles tensed, fighting instinctively. "What should I do?" the child asked. The monk's answer was simple. "Float." The word echoed. "Float," the child repeated, startled. "Yes," the monk said, "not away from the river. On it." The child's heart raced. Floating meant surrendering vertical control. It meant trusting something unseen to hold the body. "I've never done that," the child said. The monk's voice softened. "You have been floating your entire life," he said. "You simply called it struggling." The child took a deep breath. Slowly, carefully, the child bent the knees and leaned back, allowing the body to tilt into the water. Panic flared briefly as the current lifted the legs, pulling them downstream. The child gasped. "Breathe," the monk said. The child inhaled sharply, then exhaled slowly. The body responded. The water supported the child's back, buoyant and firm. The current flowed beneath, carrying rather than dragging. The fear that had once screamed now whispered, uncertain of its place. The child floated. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but sufficiently. The sky appeared above, wide and pale, drifting clouds mirroring the motion below. The river and the heavens moved in opposite directions, and the child lay between them, held. A wave of emotion rose unexpectedly. Relief. Tears welled, mixing with river water. "I'm not sinking," the child whispered. The monk smiled from shore. "You were never meant to." The child let the arms spread slightly, fingers trailing in the current. Sensation replaced thought. The river carried, adjusted, corrected, without judgment. For the first time, the child felt movement without anxiety. Not numbness, not dissociation. Participation. "This feels alive," the child said, voice trembling. "Yes," the monk replied, "because you're no longer resisting life. You are moving with it." The river curved gently, guiding the child around a bend. The bank on the far side came into view, closer now, not rushed toward, but approached naturally. The child felt a quiet amazement. "I didn't do anything," the child said. The monk nodded. "You did the hardest thing." "What?" the child asked. "You stopped interfering." The river gradually shallowed. The child's feet touched the bottom again, solid and reassuring. Slowly, carefully, the child stood, water streaming from clothes and hair. The current still moved, but the child was upright, grounded, present. The monk crossed the river at a shallower point and joined the child on the opposite bank. They stood together in silence. The child looked back at the path taken, the stretch of water that had once seemed impossible. "I thought surrender would make me weaker," the child said. The monk smiled. "And instead," he asked. "And instead," the child replied, "it made me capable." The monk nodded approvingly. "Strength," he said, "is not the ability to dominate life. It is the ability to move with it without breaking." The child looked down at trembling hands, not from fear now, but from the aftershock of truth. "I didn't disappear," the child said quietly. "I didn't lose myself." "No," the monk replied. "You met yourself." The river flowed on behind them, unchanged by the crossing, yet forever altered in meaning. The child felt a deep stillness, not because nothing was moving, but because nothing needed to be stopped. For the first time, the child understood what it meant to trust change, not as an idea, but as an embodied experience. The river never stopped, and carried by its current, the child discovered a strength that could never be built by standing still. The child stood on the far bank, water dripping from hair and sleeves, breath steady but deep. The river flowed behind, unchanged, unremarkable to the world, yet utterly transformed in meaning. What once appeared as an obstacle now felt like a passage. What once demanded resistance now invited cooperation. The child felt the trembling in the legs, not weakness, but the afterglow of effort released. "I thought surrender would leave me empty," the child said quietly. The monk stood beside the child, gazing at the water with the same gentle attention he always carried. "And instead," the monk asked. "And instead," the child replied, searching for the right words, "I feel solid, like something inside me stopped shaking." The monk nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "because surrender is not collapse. It is alignment." The child looked down at the ground beneath bare feet. It felt firm, dependable, not because it could be controlled, but because it could be trusted to be what it was. "I didn't force my way across," the child said. "I didn't conquer anything." The monk smiled faintly. "And yet," he said, "you crossed." The child felt the weight of that truth settle gently in the chest. They walked a short distance away from the river, where grass grew thicker and the earth was dry. The child sat, knees drawn up, wrapping arms loosely around the body, not out of fear but comfort. For the first time since arriving at the river days ago, the child felt tired in a different way. Not exhausted, complete. The monk sat nearby. "Tell me," the monk said softly, "what do you believe strength is?" The child thought for a long moment. "Before," the child said, "I thought strength meant holding on, standing firm, not being moved." The monk nodded. "And now?" he asked. "And now," the child continued, "it feels like strength is knowing when to let myself be moved." The monk's eyes softened. "Yes," he said, "true strength is not rigidity. It is responsiveness." The child stared at the river through the trees, watching how it bent around stones, never shattering, never stopping. "I always thought surrender meant giving up," the child admitted, like admitting defeat. The monk shook his head gently. "Surrender," he said, "is not surrendering to life's cruelty. It is surrendering the fantasy that you were meant to control life at all." The child felt a wave of relief pass through the body. So much effort had been spent trying to hold things together. Relationships, identities, expectations, believing that vigilance was the price of safety. "But if I surrender," the child asked, "how do I protect myself?" The monk picked up a blade of grass and let it fall from his fingers. "Protection," he said, "comes from flexibility, not armor." The child considered this. "When the wind blows," the monk continued, "the rigid branch snaps. The flexible one bends." The child nodded. "I've snapped before," the child said quietly. The monk did not deny it. "Yes," he said, "and you survived." The child looked surprised. "I didn't feel like I survived," the child said. "I felt broken." The monk smiled gently. "Broken," he said, "is what it feels like when an old shape can no longer hold what you are becoming." The words resonated deeply. The child thought of the dam, how it had been built with effort and intention, yet collapsed under pressure. The collapse had felt like failure. But now, seeing the river flowing freely again, the child understood something new. The dam had not been strong. It had been tense. Strength that depends on control. The monk continued, always fears release. Strength born of surrender fears nothing. The child exhaled slowly. "So when I let the river carry me," the child said, "I wasn't being weak." "No," the monk replied. "You were being honest." The child smiled faintly. "That was the hardest part," the child said, "admitting I couldn't do it alone." The monk nodded. "Yes," he said, "the mind resists surrender because it confuses independence with isolation." The child felt a quiet warmth spread through the chest. "I wasn't alone in the river," the child said. "The water held me." The monk smiled. "And life," he said, "will hold you in the same way, if you allow it." The child sat quietly, absorbing this. A memory surfaced, moments of exhaustion when help had been available, but pride had refused it. moments when pain had been endured silently, believing that endurance itself was proof of worth. I thought suffering made me strong, the child said softly. The monk's voice was compassionate. Suffering teaches, he said, but only when it is listened to, not worshipped. The child nodded slowly. So surrender doesn't mean I stop caring, the child said. No, the monk replied. It means you stop strangling what you care about. The child smiled, recognizing the truth in that. They sat as clouds drifted overhead, shadows moving across the grass. I feel different, the child said after a while. Not braver exactly, but steadier. The monk nodded. Because you're no longer standing against life, he said. You're standing with it. The child stood and walked a few steps, testing the body. The legs felt strong, not tight, not defensive. I don't feel the need to prove anything, the child said, surprised. The monk smiled. Yes, he said, surrender ends the performance. The child laughed quietly. So much of my life, the child said, has felt like trying to show I could handle things, even when I couldn't. The monk's expression was kind. Now, he said, you no longer need to handle the river. The child turned back toward the water. The river flowed on, indifferent to realization, faithful to itself. And because of that, the monk continued, you can finally trust yourself. The child looked at him. Trust myself? The child asked. Yes, the monk replied, because you now know you do not need to control life in order to live it. The child felt a deep calm settle, not a fleeting emotion, but a grounded knowing. What happens next? The child asked. The monk smiled. Life, he said, as it always has. The child nodded. The river would continue to change. Days would bring uncertainty. Fear would return at times. Loss would still happen. But something essential had shifted. The child no longer believed that strength came from resisting change. Strength came from meeting it, open-handed. As they began to walk away from the river, the child glanced back one last time. The water flowed freely, carrying light, carrying shadow, carrying everything without strain. The child understood now. Surrender was not the end of strength. It was its source. The child woke before sunrise with a feeling that was difficult to name. It was not urgency. It was not fear. It was not even anticipation. It was a quiet openness, like a door left ajar, inviting but not demanding. The river could not yet be seen from where the child rested, but its presence was unmistakable. Even in the dark, the child sensed it moving, steady, continuous, unconcerned with the turning of hours. For the first time, this constancy did not feel like pressure. It felt like reassurance. The child rose and walked toward the river in the dim light. Mist hovered low, blurring the edges of everything. The valley felt suspended between night and day, neither fully one nor the other. The river flowed through it effortlessly, as if time itself had loosened its grip. The monk was already there. He stood near the water's edge, hands resting loosely at his sides, eyes following the movement of the current. He did not turn when the child approached. You are quiet this morning, he said. So, is everything else? The child replied. The monk smiled slightly. Yes, he said. This is a good hour for seeing clearly. They stood together, watching the river emerge gradually as the light grew stronger. Shapes appeared where there had been only shadow. Reflections formed and dissolved. The water remained, neither arriving nor leaving. The child spoke after a long silence. I've been thinking, the child said, about where all this began. The monk nodded. Many do. I keep trying to find the start, the child continued. The moment things went wrong. The moment fear began. The point where I should have chosen differently. The monk turned to the child gently. And have you found it? He asked. The child shook the head. No, the child said. Every time I think I've found the beginning, there's something before it. The monk smiled. Yes, he said. That is because beginnings are stories we tell, not facts we discover. The child frowned slightly, intrigued. But things do begin, the child said. People are born. Moments start. The monk picked up a small pebble and dropped it into the river. Ripples spread outward, then vanished. Did the ripple begin? The monk asked, when the stone touched the water. The child watched carefully. Yes. And did the conditions for that ripple exist before the stone fell? The monk asked. The child paused. Yes, the child said. The water was already there. The stone was already there. Gravity was already there. The monk nodded. So where did the ripple truly begin? He asked. The child felt something shift. It didn't really begin, the child said slowly. It just appeared when conditions met. The monk's eyes softened. Yes, he said. So it is with everything. They turned back to the river. The water flowed on, carrying traces of rain from distant mountains, sediments from ancient rock, warmth from the sun that had risen millions of times before. This moment was inseparable from countless others. I used to think my suffering had a clear beginning, the child said quietly, like a mistake I could point to. The monk nodded. That belief, he said, keeps people trapped in regret. The child felt a tightening in the chest ease. If there is no clear beginning, the child said, then there is no single moment to blame. The monk smiled. And no fixed moment to repair, he added. Only this moment to meet. They stood in silence as birds began to call from the trees, their songs weaving into the sound of the water. The child watched the river closely. It feels strange, the child said. The river never seems to start anywhere, and it never really ends. The monk nodded. You see the river past this point, he said. But where does it truly begin? The child thought of springs high in the mountains, melting snow, rain falling from clouds. And where does it end? The monk continued. In the sea, in the sky, in the clouds that become rain again. The child exhaled slowly. It doesn't really end either, the child said. No, the monk replied. It only changes expression. The child felt a deep resonance in this. So my life, the child said, is like that too. The monk nodded. You are not created out of nothing, he said. And you will not vanish into nothing. The child felt a subtle fear rise and dissolve. What about death? The child asked quietly. The monk did not look away. Death, he said, is a change of form, not the erasure of existence. The child looked at the flowing water again, imagining drops rising as vapor, becoming clouds, returning as rain, feeding rivers again. I used to be afraid that one day everything would just stop, the child said. The monk smiled gently. Nothing that is alive ever truly stops, he said. It only stops appearing in the way you are accustomed to seeing it. The child let this sink in, not as a belief, but as a reflection. For so long, the fear of endings had driven the child's resistance. Endings of relationships, endings of identities, endings of moments that felt safe. But standing here, watching the river, the child realized something quietly astonishing. Endings were never absolute. They were transitions mislabeled. I think, the child said slowly, I've been afraid of disappearing. The monk nodded. Yes, he said, because you believed you were a single moment rather than a continuous unfolding. The child closed the eyes briefly. Memories passed through awareness. Childhood laughter, adolescent confusion, moments of heartbreak, moments of clarity. Each felt vivid when remembered, yet none were still present. And yet, awareness remained. The same awareness that noticed the river now. I don't feel like I started at any one point, the child said softly. And I don't feel like I'm heading toward an ending. The monk smiled. Because you are not aligned with two ends, he said. You are a movement. The child opened the eyes. The river flowed before them, seamless, unbroken, yet never the same from one second to the next. I used to think I was late, the child said. Late to life, late to understanding, like I had missed something important at the beginning. The monk shook his head gently. There is no late, he said. Only now. The child felt a warmth spread through the chest. So, I didn't fail by arriving here this way, the child said. No, the monk replied. You arrived exactly as you could. They stood together as the sun rose fully now, illuminating the valley in clear light. The child felt an unfamiliar sense of ease, not because everything was resolved, but because nothing needed a final answer. I don't need to trace my life back to a starting point, the child said, and I don't need to worry about how it ends. The monk nodded. Freedom, he said, begins when you stop trying to locate yourself in time. The child smiled faintly. The river flowed on, no beginning to be found, no one to be feared, only an endless unfolding, moment by moment, carrying everything forward without asking permission. And standing beside it, the child understood something deeply, not as philosophy, but as lived truth. That life was not a journey from birth to death, but a continuous movement of becoming, with no fixed start and no final stopping place. The child no longer thought of themselves as a child, not because age had suddenly arrived, but because something subtler had shifted. The fear that once defined the way the world was met had loosened its grip. In its place grew a quiet steadiness, a trust that did not need constant reassurance. The river remained. It always would. But now, standing beside it, the child noticed something new. They were no longer alone in their hesitation. Others had begun to gather. At first, it was just one figure, a traveler standing at the familiar edge of the water, staring at the current with the same tightness in the chest the child once knew intimately. Then another appeared, and another. Some stood far back, arms crossed, unwilling even to approach. Others came close, toes hovering above the water, eyes full of uncertainty. The child watched them quietly. No urgencieros, no impulse to correct or instruct, only recognition. I know this place, the child thought. I have stood here. The monk stood nearby, observing with gentle attention. He said nothing, but his presence carried a silent question. The child felt it clearly. Are you ready to walk with him? One of the travelers, a woman with weary eyes and shoulders heavy with unspoken stories, finally spoke. I can't cross, she said, her voice strained. I've tried before. The child turned toward her, not surprised. What happened? The child asked. I lost my footing, the woman replied. I panicked. I thought the river was trying to take me. The child nodded slowly. Yes, the child said. It can feel that way. Another traveler stepped forward, a man gripping a walking staff tightly, knuckles white. I don't trust it, he said bluntly. If I step in, I won't come back the same. The child met his gaze. No, the child said gently. You won't. The man stiffened. Then why would I go? The child paused. This was the moment where words could easily become doctrine, where truth could be offered too quickly, becoming another thing to resist. So the child did not answer immediately. Instead, the child walked toward the river. Bare feet touched the water without hesitation. The current curled around the ankles, familiar now, not alarming. The travelers watched closely. The child turned back to them. I didn't come back the same, the child said. But I did come back. The woman's eyes softened. But you're not afraid, she said. The child smiled faintly. I am, the child replied. Just not of the river. The monk observed silently, a trace of quiet approval in his posture. The child extended a hand toward the woman. Come, the child said. We won't rush. The woman hesitated, then slowly stepped forward. Her foot touched the water, and she inhaled sharply. It's cold, she said. Yes, the child replied. It wakes you up. They stood together at the edge, the water moving around their feet. The child did not pull, did not push, simply remained present, grounded, calm, responsive. I don't know how to do this, the woman whispered. The child nodded. That's all right, the child said. You don't have to know. The man with the staff watched skeptically. What if she falls? He asked. The child met his gaze calmly. She might, the child said, but not because the river is cruel. The woman took another step, gripping the child's arm lightly. The current pressed against them both, stronger now. Fear flickered across her face. I'm losing balance, she said. Lean with it, the child replied. Not away. She adjusted slightly, angling her body downstream, just as the child had learned. Instantly, the strain lessened. Her eyes widened. Oh, she said. That helped. The child smiled. Yes, the child said. The river teaches quickly when you listen. Another traveler stepped forward, then another. Soon, several stood at the water's edge, watching closely, not just the river, but the way the child moved within it. The child felt no pride, only gratitude. They moved slowly, deliberately. When the water deepened, the child showed the woman how to soften knees, how to breathe, how to feel the current rather than resist it. When fear rose, the child did not dismiss it. Fear is allowed, the child said. Just don't let it decide. They reached the deeper part, where standing became effortful. The woman's breath quickened. I can't, she said. The child nodded. Then float, the child said. She hesitated. I'll sink, she said. The child shook the head gently. You'll be held, the child replied. Together, they leaned back, the water lifting them both. The woman gasped once, then stilled as buoyancy took over. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm not sinking, she whispered. No, the child said. You never were. They floated briefly, the current carrying them steadily toward the far bank. When the water shallowed again, they stood, dripping, breathless. The woman laughed, a sound half disbelief, half release. I did it, she said. Yes, the child replied. You did. But the child knew something important. The crossing was not the accomplishment. The trust was. The others crossed too, some with guidance, some simply by watching. Each carried their own fear, their own resistance. The child did not try to erase it, only to walk beside it. Some crossed halfway and turned back. The child did not judge. This is enough for today, the child said to them. The river will still be here. One man remained on the original bank, the one with the walking staff. He watched everyone else reach the far side, his expression conflicted. You didn't convince them, he said. You didn't argue. The child smiled gently. No, the child said. I just went first. The man looked at the river, then back at the child. You don't seem like a teacher, he said. The child shook the head. I'm not, the child replied. I'm a fellow traveler. The man studied the water again, then slowly removed his staff and placed it on the ground. I'm tired of holding on so tightly, he said. The child nodded. That's how it begins, the child said. He stepped in. The monk watched from a distance, his presence now barely noticeable, like the river itself, receding into the background as understanding took center stage. As the last traveler reached the far bank, the child felt something unexpected. Not exhaustion, expansion. Helping others cross had not drained strength. It had clarified it. The child understood now what the monk had never said aloud. Wisdom is not proven by how much you know, but by how gently you walk beside those who are afraid. The travelers rested on the far bank, sharing quiet smiles, damp clothes, and newly lightened hearts. Some would continue their journey soon. Others would stay longer, sitting by the water as the child once had. The child turned back toward the river one more time. It flowed on, unchanged, yet countless crossings had occurred within it. The monk approached and stood beside the child. You did not carry them, the monk said softly. The child nodded. I just reminded them, the child replied, that the river could. The monk smiled. Yes, he said, that is compassion without attachment. The child felt the truth of it deeply. To carry others across did not mean saving them from the river. It meant standing with them until they trusted it themselves. The river never stopped, and now the child understood another truth just as profound. That awakening is not something you keep for yourself. It is something that naturally flows outward, quietly, steadily, like a river inviting others to step in. The river had not changed. It still flowed with the same quiet determination, bending around stones, carrying light and shadow alike. But the way the child stood beside it had changed so completely that it felt as though the world itself had shifted. There was no longer a sense of arrival or achievement, only presence. The child noticed others before they noticed the child. They came in ones and twos at first, travelers drawn by the river's sound, or perhaps by something subtler, the stillness of someone who was no longer arguing with life. They stood where the child had once stood, feet planted firmly on the bank, eyes fixed on the moving water. Fear lived openly in their bodies. The child recognized it immediately, not as something foreign, but as an old companion. A young man hovered at the edge, arms folded tightly across his chest, gaze darting from the river to the opposite bank. I don't think I can cross, he said to no one in particular. An older woman sat on a nearby stone, clutching a bundle close to her chest, as if it contained everything she had left. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. "I've lost too much already," she whispered. "If I step in and lose more, I don't know what will be left of me." The child felt no urge to reassure them, no urge to say it will be fine or there's nothing to fear. Those words, the child knew now, often deepened fear rather than softened it. Instead, the child listened. The monk stood a little distance away, observing with quiet attentiveness. He did not intervene. He did not instruct. His role had changed too, from teacher to witness. The child approached the young man first. "What are you afraid of?" the child asked gently. The man laughed nervously. "Isn't it obvious? The river, the current, not knowing where I'll end up." The child nodded. "Yes," the child said. "That's exactly what it feels like." The man blinked. "You don't deny it?" "No," the child replied. "Why would I?" The man hesitated, unsettled by the honesty. "I thought you'd tell me not to be afraid," he said. The child smiled softly. "I wouldn't insult you like that," the child replied. "Fear is telling you the truth. Something important is happening." The man fell silent. The child turned to the older woman. "And you?" the child asked quietly. "What are you holding so tightly?" The woman looked down at the bundle in her arms. "My past," she said. "My memories. Who I used to be." The child sat beside her on the stone. "I held that too," the child said. "For a long time." The woman looked up sharply. "And did you lose it?" she asked. The child thought carefully. "I lost the way I was holding it," the child said. "Not what it meant." The woman's grip loosened just a little. More travelers gathered. Some standing, some sitting, all watching. The river continued to flow, unbothered by the tension gathering at its edge. The child stood and stepped into the water. Not dramatically, not as a demonstration, simply as one would step into truth. The water curled around the ankles, familiar and cool. The child did not rush forward, did not turn back. Just stood there, breathing, letting the current announce itself. "You see," the child said to the group, "the river doesn't demand courage. It asks for attention." The young man watched closely. "It looks like it's pulling you," he said. "Yes," the child replied, "and I'm letting it." "But what if it pulls too hard?" he asked. The child smiled faintly. "Then I adjust," the child said. "Not by fighting, but by listening." The child shifted weight slightly, angling the body downstream. The tension in the water changed immediately. Less resistance, more cooperation. The group noticed. "You didn't force it," the woman said softly. "No," the child replied. "I stopped asking it to behave differently." Silence followed. Then the woman stood. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She approached the edge and dipped one foot into the water. She inhaled sharply, then froze. "I can't," she said. "My legs are shaking." The child extended a hand, not to pull, but to offer steadiness. "Let them shake," the child said. "They're learning." The woman took another step. The water reached her calves, the current pressing more firmly now. Her breath quickened. "I feel like I'm losing control," she whispered. The child nodded. "That's the moment," the child said. "Not to turn back, but to soften." She looked at the child, eyes wide. "Soften," she repeated. "Yes," the child said. "You don't cross by becoming harder. You cross by becoming responsive." She loosened her shoulders slightly, bent her knees, allowed the water to move her instead of bracing against it. Something shifted. Her body steadied. "Oh," she whispered. "It's different now." The child smiled. "Yes," the child said. "You're not standing against life anymore." One by one, others stepped forward. Some held the child's hand briefly, then let go. Others watched and followed without contact. Each crossing looked different. Some tentative, some swift, some interrupted by tears or laughter. The child did not rush anyone. "This isn't a race," the child said more than once. "The river isn't going anywhere." One traveler stopped halfway, panic flooding the face. "I can't do this," he said, voice breaking. "It's too much." The child moved closer, maintaining eye contact. "Then stop trying to do it," the child said gently. He stared in confusion. "Lean," the child continued. "Let the water hold what you're trying to carry." The traveler hesitated, then slowly leaned back. The current lifted him slightly, enough to take the strain from his legs. A sob escaped him, raw and unguarded. "I've been so tired," he whispered. The child nodded. "Yes," the child said, "because you've been carrying what the river was always willing to carry for you." They floated together briefly, then stood again as the water shallowed. When the traveler reached the far bank, he collapsed onto the grass, not from weakness but release. Others followed. Not everyone crossed. Some chose to sit by the river instead, watching, breathing, letting their fears settle without forcing a decision. The child honored that too. "Crossing isn't proof of wisdom," the child said quietly to one who remained behind. "Listening is." As the light shifted and the day deepened, the group dispersed naturally. Some continued their journeys beyond the river. Others stayed, resting, reflecting, changed in ways they could not yet name. The child stood at the water's edge once more, now alone. The monk approached. "You did not tell them what to believe," the monk said. The child shook the head. "I just stood where fear meets trust," the child replied. The monk smiled. "Yes," he said, "that is how understanding moves from one heart to another." The child looked at the river, watching it carry reflections of clouds that never stayed. "I didn't save anyone," the child said. The monk nodded. "No," he replied. "You simply reminded them that they were not alone in the current." The child felt no pride, only humility. Helping others cross had not made the child stronger than them. It had revealed a deeper truth. That compassion is not about lifting others out of the river, but about stepping into it with them, without fear, without force, until they remember that the flow itself is trustworthy. The river never stopped, and now it carried not just one life forward, but many, each in their own way, each at their own pace, each learning as the child once did. That crossing was never about leaving fear behind. It was about walking with it, until fear loosened its grip, and let the current do what it had always done best: carry life onward. The understanding did not arrive as fireworks. There was no sudden vision, no dramatic revelation, no moment where the world split open and declared its meaning. It arrived quietly, so quietly that the child almost missed it. The river flowed as it always had, wide and patient, carrying the reflections of sky and passing clouds without holding onto any of them. Morning light rested briefly on the surface, then drifted away. Leaves floated past, touched the water, disappeared downstream. Nothing extraordinary was happening, and that was precisely when it happened. The child stood alone on the bank, not waiting for anyone, not guiding anyone, not seeking anything. The travelers had gone their separate ways. The monk was no longer nearby. Even the sense of purpose that once accompanied every visit to the river had dissolved. There was only standing, only breathing, only this moment unadorned. The child watched the water move and noticed something subtle but unmistakable. There was no distance anymore. Not between observer and river. Not between stillness and motion. Not between what was happening and what was aware of it. The old habit of thinking, "I am watching the river," gently fell away. What remained was simpler. There was watching, and there was movement, and they were not two. The child felt a soft stirring in the chest. Not excitement, not fear, but recognition. Like remembering something that had never truly been forgotten. All this time, the child had believed the river was a teacher outside of life, a symbol pointing toward truth. But symbols are needed only when separation is assumed. Standing there now, the child realized there had never been separation at all. The same movement that shaped the river shaped breath. The same flow that carried leaves carried thoughts. The same impermanence that once frightened the child was the very reason awareness remained alive. The river was not showing the child how life works. It was showing the child what life is. A memory surfaced, not as regret, but as gentle clarity. The fear of loss, the urge to control, the exhaustion of resisting change, the relief of surrender, the quiet strength discovered in being carried. None of these moments were mistakes. They were currents, each one necessary, each one passing through the same underlying presence. The child closed the eyes. Sensations arose, cool air on skin, the faint ache in muscles, the rhythm of breath. Thoughts drifted by, images of the past, possibilities of the future. Emotions shimmered briefly, then softened. And beneath all of it, something remained untouched. Not frozen, not distant, but steady. Awareness did not cling to what arose, nor did it push anything away. It allowed everything to come and go, just as the river allowed every drop to pass through without needing to keep any of them. The child opened the eyes again. The river flowed. And for the first time, the child did not think, I must learn to trust this. Trust was already present, because the child was not standing beside the river. The child was the river, appearing for a moment as a body, a story, a name, a path. This body would change. This story would shift. This form would one day dissolve. But the movement itself would not end. The fear of death, once heavy and persistent, loosened its hold. Not because death had been explained away, but because it had been re-seen. Death was not the opposite of life. It was a change in expression. Just as the river became mist, just as mist became cloud, just as cloud became rain, nothing essential was ever lost. Only forms came and went. The child remembered the early days, the terror of watching water move, the desperate wish for stillness, the belief that safety required permanence. How exhausting that belief had been. Now, standing here, the child understood something with gentle certainty. Stillness had never been missing. It had only been mistaken for immobility. True stillness was what remained while everything moved. The river had always known this. That was why it never feared change. It did not need to defend an identity. It did not need to preserve a moment. It did not need to hold itself together. It flowed, and in flowing, it remained whole. A soft smile appeared on the child's face, not from achievement, but from relief. There was nothing left to become, nothing left to fix, nothing left to cross. Even the idea of awakening felt unnecessary now. Another concept trying to capture what could only be lived. The child had not reached the end of a journey. The child had stepped out of the idea that there had ever been one. Life would continue to bring pain and joy, meeting and parting, building and dissolving. The body would age. Loved ones would come and go. Moments would arise and pass away. But none of it needed to be feared, because fear required the belief that something essential could be taken. And that belief had quietly dissolved. The child turned away from the river, not because the lesson was finished, but because there was no longer a teacher and a student. Every step away from the water felt just as alive as standing beside it. Every breath carried the same truth. Change was no longer something to endure. It was the expression of life itself. And life, the child now knew, was not happening to anyone. It was happening as everything. The river never stopped, and neither did awareness. They had never been separate. When the child finally walked on, leaving the river behind, nothing was actually left behind at all. The flow continued, through valleys and cities, through laughter and grief, through beginnings that were never absolute, and endings that were never final. And wherever that flow appeared, in a breath, in a heartbeat, in a moment of quiet understanding, it was always the same river, remembering itself,